Imagine a place so sacred, so deeply embedded in spiritual lore, that it is believed to be the very site where God, in a moment of profound revelation, directly communicated with humanity. This place, Mount Sinai, has long been enveloped in an aura of mystery and reverence, a place where the laws that would shape the course of human spirituality were delivered. But what if this pivotal event held secrets beyond what is recorded in the texts? What if, woven within the very fabric of the laws revealed on that sacred mountain, there existed a hidden code, understood only by those initiated into its deeper meanings? And even more intriguing, what if Jesus himself was aware of these esoteric truths, using them to guide his teachings and perform his miracles? For centuries, the Torah has been regarded not just as a set of moral commandments, but as a divine map, a guide to understanding the very essence of the divine order. In Jewish tradition, it is believed that the sacred texts contain layers of meaning that only the prepared mind can unravel. The rabbis speak of 4 distinct levels of interpretation: the Peshat, simple meaning; the Remez, hinted meaning; the Dirash, interpretive meaning; and the Sod, secret meaning, with the latter reserved for the few who are spiritually advanced enough to access it. This hidden wisdom, passed down through the generations, is believed to hold the keys to understanding the true nature of reality itself. When Moses ascended Mount Sinai, it is said that he received not only the 10 Commandments, the foundational moral laws for the Jewish people, but also a deeper, more profound understanding, an esoteric wisdom passed down through the spiritual leaders of the people. This deeper knowledge, unlike the explicit laws, was embedded in the very letters, combinations, and sacred numbers of the Torah. This wisdom would eventually give rise to Kabbalah, a mystical tradition that teaches that there is a hidden structure behind creation itself, a divine order that Moses is believed to have received directly from the divine. But what is the connection between this hidden knowledge and Jesus? Some have proposed that Jesus may have been in contact with a group of mystics known as the Essenes, a sect of Jews who valued spiritual purity and were deeply engaged in the study of sacred texts. The discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls in Qumran revealed that the Essenes had a unique understanding of the scriptures, one that emphasized the coming of a master of righteousness, a figure who would bring a hidden revelation. Many scholars suggest that this figure bears striking similarities to Jesus, and some even speculate that Jesus may have been initiated into the same mystical tradition of which the Essenes were a part. If Jesus had indeed encountered the Essenes, could he have gained access to the profound wisdom that they, and others like them, were privy to? His teachings, often filled with rich metaphors and symbols, suggest that he possessed a deep, transcendent understanding of the Torah, one that went beyond the literal interpretation. Phrases such as, "Let him who has ears to hear, let him hear," suggest that Jesus' messages carried multiple layers of meaning, available only to those who were prepared to understand them. This was a wisdom that could not be easily grasped, and it likely required a deeper, mystical knowledge of the sacred texts to truly comprehend. Furthermore, Jewish mysticism holds that the very language of the Torah, the Hebrew language, is sacred, with each letter possessing a numerical value. This practice, known as gematria, allows for hidden meanings to be revealed through the numerical relationships between words. Could it be that Jesus, aware of this ancient tradition, used it to communicate his deeper teachings, conveying messages in a veiled manner that only the initiated could decode? The parallels between Moses and Jesus are also striking. Both figures ascended mountains to experience a profound connection with the divine, Moses on Mount Sinai, and Jesus during his transfiguration. In both instances, their faces radiated with a divine light, signaling that they had encountered something beyond the ordinary realm of human experience. Could this be a symbolic indication that Jesus was reactivating the same hidden knowledge that Moses had received on Sinai? In Jewish mystical thought, there is also the concept of forbidden knowledge, a kind of divine wisdom that is so powerful that only a select few are capable of receiving it. There are stories of rabbis who, in their pursuit of this deeper understanding, suffered severe consequences. Some went mad, others died, and only a very few returned unscathed. This suggests that the knowledge Moses received was not just a theoretical idea, but a living, dynamic force, one that could be dangerous if wielded by those who were not spiritually prepared to handle it. Kabbalistic teachings further suggest that the revelation on Mount Sinai was not simply a physical event, but a cosmic experience, a moment in which the very fabric of the universe was transformed. This idea resonates with Jesus' own teachings, particularly his reference to the kingdom of heaven, which he described as already present, though hidden from the eyes of most. Could Jesus have been referring to this hidden dimension of reality? A reality known only to those who were initiated into the secret traditions of Hebrew mysticism. One of the most pressing questions that arises from all of this is whether this hidden code, this sacred knowledge, was lost or deliberately obscured over time. If such a code truly existed, was it suppressed by later religious institutions? And if so, why? Did Jesus, in his own way, attempt to reveal this deeper truth to the world? And if he did, why was his message so quickly silenced by those in power? In the following sections, we will explore the lineage of spiritual guardians who may have preserved this sacred knowledge. How was this wisdom passed down through the generations? From the patriarchs of ancient times to Jesus himself? Was this knowledge concealed in secret traditions, still guarded by a select few today? From the earliest days of human civilization, the transmission of sacred knowledge has been a closely guarded affair. The ancient patriarchs, far from merely being spiritual leaders, were also the keepers of profound secrets, secrets that defined the relationship between humanity and the divine. These secrets, passed down through generations, contained the keys to understanding creation, the nature of reality, and the intimate connection between humans and God. But did Jesus belong to this lineage of spiritual guardians? Was he part of the unbroken chain that stretched back to figures like Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, patriarchs who were described as having a profound understanding of the mysteries of heaven and earth? Jewish mystical literature holds that Abraham, the father of monotheism, was especially endowed with this knowledge. It is said that he walked with God and was privy to divine mysteries that eluded most others. The apocryphal Book of Enoch, which dates back to ancient times, suggests that Abraham had a deep understanding of the secrets of the heavens and the earth, knowledge that he passed on to his descendants. Influencing the teachings of Isaac and Jacob, these patriarchs, and their descendants, were not only the spiritual leaders of the Jewish people but also the preservers of sacred knowledge, a tradition that Jesus, perhaps, was destined to continue. Throughout history, there has always been a wealth of knowledge accessible to the masses. Yet concealed beneath the surface lies another kind of wisdom, a lineage of spiritual understanding reserved for a select few. While mainstream religious traditions recount familiar narratives, there exists a parallel thread woven through time, passed down by those who have been initiated into the deeper mysteries of existence. Among the enigmatic figures tied to this hidden wisdom, one name stands out with an almost mythical aura: Melchizedek, described in the book of Genesis as both a king and a priest. Melchizedek is an anomaly, a character without recorded ancestry, appearing as though he exists beyond the confines of time. He is known for offering bread and wine to Abraham following a victorious battle, a gesture imbued with profound esoteric significance. This is no ordinary priestly act, rather, it hints at a sacred lineage that transcends conventional religious structures. In mystical traditions, Melchizedek represents an eternal priesthood, one not bound by hereditary succession but instead rooted in divine wisdom. This connection becomes even more compelling when examining the New Testament, where Jesus himself is associated with the order of Melchizedek. The book of Hebrews proclaims him a priest in this sacred lineage, signifying that he carried forward an ancient spiritual tradition that existed outside the established Levitical priesthood. If this is true, it would suggest that Jesus was not merely a teacher within Judaism but a bearer of esoteric knowledge that had been preserved across generations by those entrusted with the most profound divine truths. Another crucial element in this intricate tapestry is the concept of the Shekinah, the manifest presence of God within the world. Ancient Hebrew mystics understood the Shekinah as more than just a theological abstraction. They viewed it as a tangible force, a luminous presence that could be directly experienced by those who were spiritually attuned. The patriarchs of old were considered vessels of this divine light, acting as conduits through which the higher realms touched the earthly plane. Jesus, in his teachings, echoes this very idea when he declares, "The kingdom of God is within you." He is not merely offering a poetic sentiment but pointing to an inner reality accessible to those who have cultivated the capacity to perceive it. This aligns with the esoteric wisdom found in the Old Testament, particularly in the book of Proverbs, which personifies wisdom as an active force guiding those who seek it. Such wisdom, according to mystical traditions, is not attainable through intellect alone but is revealed only to those initiated into deeper spiritual truths. Jewish mystical traditions further reinforce this notion, preserving tales of prophets and sages who possessed this hidden knowledge. One of the most striking figures in this regard is the prophet Elijah, who, according to scripture, never experienced death but was instead taken directly into the heavens. His mysterious departure from the physical realm signifies his intimate connection with a divine lineage of wisdom keepers. This connection becomes even more significant in the Gospels, where Elijah appears alongside Moses during the transfiguration of Jesus. This moment serves as an implicit confirmation that Jesus was part of the same spiritual continuum, carrying forward teachings that had been safeguarded for ages. Within Jewish tradition, the transmission of divine wisdom has always followed a dual pathway. There was the public teaching of the Torah, intended for the general population, but there was also an esoteric layer, a deeper knowledge reserved for those who were ready to grasp it. The Gospels reflect this distinction when Jesus speaks in parables, explaining to his disciples that they have been granted access to the mysteries of the kingdom of God, whereas others receive only veiled messages. This revelation is crucial because it suggests that Jesus was not merely imparting moral guidance but was encoding a sophisticated spiritual doctrine accessible only to those prepared to receive it. Traditionally, the Levites were the keepers of Israel's spiritual knowledge, entrusted with preserving the sacred teachings and rituals of the Torah. However, within this priestly class, there were those who delved deeper, studying the hidden mechanics of creation, the interplay of cosmic forces, and the ineffable mysteries of God's name. Despite not belonging to the Levite tribe, Jesus demonstrated an extraordinary command of these sacred teachings, astonishing even the most learned temple scholars. The question then arises, where did Jesus acquire such profound knowledge? The canonical Gospels remain silent on his formative years, but apocryphal accounts and ancient traditions suggest that he may have traveled to distant lands, seeking wisdom from spiritual masters. Legends speak of his time in Egypt and Persia, where he is said to have been initiated into esoteric traditions that were closely guarded by those who understood the deeper workings of the universe. While these accounts remain speculative, they reinforce the idea that Jesus was not merely a prophet within his own cultural context but a seeker who actively pursued the lost keys to divine wisdom. But to what end? Was this hidden knowledge meant to remain the preserve of a select group of initiates? Or was it ultimately intended to awaken humanity at large? Throughout his ministry, Jesus appears to have walked a fine line between secrecy and revelation. He spoke in cryptic metaphors, performed miracles that functioned as symbolic acts, and imparted wisdom in ways that required deeper contemplation. It is evident that he did not openly disclose everything he knew but instead provided glimpses of higher truths to those who were ready to receive them. One particularly intriguing connection worth exploring is the potential link between Jesus and the Essenes, a reclusive and ascetic Jewish sect known for their strict spiritual discipline and devotion to purity. The Essenes lived in isolation, away from the religious and political conflicts of mainstream Jewish society. They practiced rigorous rituals of purification, engaged in deep contemplation, and preserved ancient knowledge that may have been passed down since the time of Moses. The discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls in the mid-20th century shed new light on this enigmatic group, revealing texts that spoke of an impending apocalyptic transformation, the coming of a messianic figure, and a teacher of righteousness, who brought forth profound revelations yet faced opposition from the religious authorities of the time. Many scholars have drawn parallels between this mysterious teacher and Jesus himself, raising the possibility that he may have had direct contact with the Essene community or, at the very least, been influenced by their teachings. If Jesus did have ties to the Essenes, it could provide key insights into his mission. The Essenes believed that the world had become irreparably corrupted and that spiritual purity was necessary to prepare for a coming cosmic upheaval. They practiced communal living, fasting, and detachment from material possessions, all principles that resonate with Jesus' teachings. His emphasis on inner transformation, his call for detachment from worldly concerns, and his focus on spiritual enlightenment all echo the Essene way of life. Perhaps most fascinating of all is the notion that the Essenes held a deeper understanding of the Torah, one that extended beyond its surface meaning and revealed hidden layers of divine knowledge. The Qumran manuscripts suggest that they engaged in mystical exegesis, extracting insights from sacred texts that were imperceptible to ordinary interpretation. Could it be that Jesus, too, was drawing from this well of esoteric wisdom, using his parables and symbolic acts to convey truths that had been safeguarded for centuries? In the next exploration, we will delve deeper into this possible connection, examining how the Essene tradition may have shaped Jesus' message and purpose. If he was indeed influenced by this mysterious sect, what implications does it have for our understanding of his teachings? And more importantly, does it suggest that he was part of an unbroken lineage of spiritual initiates who carried forward a knowledge far older than history itself? The sacred texts of the Bible, particularly the Torah, have always been seen as more than just written laws or historical accounts. For centuries, a prevailing belief has existed that within the Torah, deeply hidden meanings and secrets lie embedded, available only to those who possess the necessary tools and knowledge to uncover them. This concept aligns closely with the teachings of Kabbalah, the Jewish mystical tradition, which holds that every word in the Torah is not just a literal commandment or law but a profound spiritual code, filled with layers of meaning waiting to be deciphered by the spiritually prepared. In a similar fashion, Jesus often employed parables, simple, seemingly everyday stories that carried profound, hidden truths. His words were not meant to be understood at face value, but to invite deeper contemplation, drawing those who were spiritually attuned into a more profound understanding of his teachings. Jesus famously said, "Let him who has ears to hear, let him hear," a clear indication that his messages carried more than a straightforward meaning. There was a layer of truth hidden beneath the surface, accessible only to those whose spiritual eyes and ears were open to receiving it. This idea that Jesus used symbolic language and deeper meanings in his teachings begs the question: could he have been employing a secret code or a deeper knowledge passed down from ancient traditions, such as those held by the Essenes, or even older traditions? The Essenes, a group of Jewish mystics, were known for their deep, spiritual understanding of the sacred texts. They viewed the revelation that Moses received on Mount Sinai not merely as a list of commandments but as a divine blueprint for understanding the very fabric of the universe. This wisdom, according to the Essenes, was something that transcended ordinary understanding, and as such, it needed to be carefully protected. If Jesus had come into contact with the Essene tradition, it might help explain the unique way he approached the law. While many religious leaders at the time emphasized strict adherence to external rules and rituals, Jesus shifted the focus inward. His message emphasized the need for internal transformation, a change of heart and spirit, rather than just conforming to external religious norms. This could be seen as a reflection of the deeper wisdom that the Essenes had regarding the spiritual realm. Moreover, one of the most intriguing aspects of the Essene tradition was their ritual of immersion in water, which symbolized spiritual purification. This ritual was central to their practice and was seen as essential for maintaining a pure connection with the divine. When we look at John the Baptist, who preached in the wilderness and baptized people in the Jordan River, we find a striking similarity to the Essene purification ritual. Many scholars believe that John the Baptist was influenced by Essene practices. And if this is true, it suggests that Jesus, who was baptized by John, may have also been initiated into this deeper spiritual path. But the influence of the Essenes on Jesus goes beyond ritual practices. The Essenes had a unique understanding of time and prophecy, viewing history not as a linear progression but as a cyclical process, where events repeat themselves in symbolic patterns. In their worldview, the arrival of a new prophet or Messiah was not a singular, isolated event, but part of a larger divine plan that unfolded according to hidden, cyclical patterns. This perspective could explain why Jesus, at various points in his ministry, referenced past events to shed light on his mission. He often connected his life and work to the history of Moses, Elijah, and other great prophets, perhaps revealing that his own mission was part of a larger, divine narrative stretching across time. This cyclical view of history and prophecy was revolutionary and likely considered radical by the religious authorities of his time. Jesus' actions, his challenge to the temple priests, his rejection of the hypocrisy of the Pharisees, and his insistence on a direct relationship with God without intermediaries, threatened the established power structures of the day. But for those who understood the deeper, esoteric knowledge of the Torah and the hidden meanings within it, Jesus' words and actions may have been seen as the unlocking of a more profound spiritual path, a path that leads directly to the divine, bypassing the traditional religious institutions and their rituals. Another essential concept that connects the teachings of Jesus with the Essenes is the theme of duality, the eternal struggle between light and darkness. In the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Essenes wrote of a cosmic battle between the forces of good and evil, where the children of light would ultimately triumph over the children of darkness. This notion of spiritual duality, where the forces of light and darkness are in constant struggle, is a recurring theme in Jesus' teachings. He frequently spoke about walking in the light and warned of the dangers of spiritual darkness. Could this be an indication that Jesus was tapping into this ancient tradition of duality, seeing his own mission as part of a larger spiritual struggle between good and evil? This brings us to an essential question. Were the Essenes merely an isolated, radical group, or did they represent the custodians of an ancient, secret knowledge that was passed down through the ages from Moses himself? If the Essenes held the key to the hidden wisdom of Sinai, could it be that Jesus, through his teachings and actions, was attempting to reactivate and reveal this ancient, secret knowledge to the world? Was his mission, in part, an effort to unlock these hidden truths and make them accessible to humanity once more? If Jesus was indeed influenced by the Essenes or similar traditions, it would explain many of his radical actions, his challenge to the Jewish religious authorities, his rejection of the traditional temple system, and his insistence on a direct connection with God all resonate with the revolutionary spirit of the Essenes. But Jesus' message went even deeper. For those who understood the hidden meaning of his teachings, those who were spiritually prepared, his words could be seen as the revelation of a path to directly access the divine. Jesus was not just preaching about moral reforms or ethical behavior. He was inviting people into a new spiritual reality, one that was rooted in the ancient wisdom of Sinai. In the next section, we will delve deeper into how the Hebrew prophets, long before Jesus, used hidden codes to convey spiritual messages. Prophets such as Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and Daniel used cryptic language, filled with symbolic visions and powerful metaphors, to convey messages that could not be understood by the uninitiated. Their words were not just poetic expressions but deliberate attempts to communicate profound, hidden truths about the nature of the cosmos and the relationship between humanity and God. The Kabbalistic tradition teaches that the language of the Torah and the prophetic books was not random or accidental. Every word, every phrase, was carefully chosen and encoded with hidden meanings that could only be revealed through specific methods of interpretation. One of the primary tools for uncovering these hidden meanings is gematria, a system in which each Hebrew letter has a numerical value. By analyzing words with equivalent numerical values, scholars can uncover connections between seemingly unrelated words and phrases, revealing hidden messages encoded within the text. The prophets, in their use of cryptic language, were not just speaking in riddles, they were using a spiritual code to convey deep, cosmic truths. They were aware that the knowledge they were transmitting was too powerful for the masses to comprehend without proper training. As such, they encoded their messages in a way that could only be understood by those with the necessary wisdom and insight. Jesus, in his use of parables, seems to follow in the footsteps of these ancient prophets, using symbolic language to communicate deeper spiritual truths to those who were ready to hear them. Much like the prophets before him, Jesus spoke in parables, metaphors, and symbols, perhaps aware that his words carried deeper meanings that could only be unlocked by those who were spiritually prepared to understand them. By using this method, Jesus may have been carrying on a prophetic tradition that had been passed down through the ages, a tradition of veiled knowledge, transmitted through symbols, numerology, and hidden codes, all designed to unlock the mysteries of the divine. Jesus' teachings, often wrapped in seemingly simple stories, carried multiple layers of meaning. When questioned about his use of parables, he responded with a striking statement, "To you, It has been given to know the mysteries of the kingdom of God. But to those outside, everything is told in parables. This suggests that he was intentionally encoding his wisdom, revealing it only to those who had the spiritual perception to decipher its hidden depths. Beyond parables, Jesus frequently used symbols and numbers in his teachings and actions. The number 12 appears repeatedly, the 12 apostles, the 12 baskets of bread collected after the multiplication of the loaves, and the consistent reference to the 12 tribes of Israel. The number 40 also holds deep significance, 40 days of fasting in the wilderness, 40 days between the resurrection and ascension. These numbers were not random. In Jewish esoteric tradition, numbers possess hidden meanings tied to profound spiritual principles. One of the clearest indications that Jesus conveyed a mystical code lies in his statement, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." While at first glance, this phrase seems straightforward, a deeper analysis within the Hebrew tradition reveals a more profound meaning. The concept of the way aligns with the secret teachings passed down by prophets and spiritual masters. Guiding initiates toward enlightenment. Truth corresponds to the Hebrew word emet, composed of the first, middle, and last letters of the Hebrew alphabet, symbolizing the totality of existence. Life connects with the Kabbalistic tree of life, representing the different planes of reality and the paths leading to divine union. If Jesus was indeed transmitting an esoteric teaching, then what was he attempting to unveil? For the Hebrew prophets, spiritual ascension was not simply about following religious laws but about inner transformation. The prophet Jeremiah foresaw a time when God's law would not be inscribed on stone tablets but would be written upon people's hearts. This vision strongly resonates with Jesus' emphasis on internal renewal rather than mere adherence to external rituals. The prophetic visions of Ezekiel also provide clues. Ezekiel's enigmatic vision of the Merkava, or heavenly chariot, has been interpreted in Jewish mystical tradition as a representation of the soul's spiritual journey toward the divine presence. This concept mirrors Jesus' teachings when he describes the kingdom of heaven as an internal reality, suggesting that he was reintroducing an ancient pathway to spiritual ascension, one that had been lost or obscured over the centuries. Even in his miraculous healings, Jesus appeared to follow a hidden pattern. His use of touch, his choice of words, and the manner in which he performed certain acts mirror mystical techniques known to ancient Jewish sages. In rabbinic tradition, the divine name of God was believed to hold immense power, so much so that, if pronounced correctly, it could perform miracles. Accounts exist within Jewish esoteric literature of spiritual masters who could heal the sick, manipulate the elements, and even resurrect the dead through their understanding of the living letters of creation. This knowledge, however, was considered too dangerous to be disclosed openly, reserved only for those deemed spiritually mature enough to handle it. Another fascinating element of Jesus' teachings is his insistence on the necessity of being born again. Nicodemus, a Pharisee and religious leader, was perplexed when Jesus told him that one must be reborn to see the kingdom of God. However, in the context of Jewish mystical tradition, this statement carries deeper implications. The concept of spiritual rebirth aligns with Kabbalistic teachings that describe the soul's evolution through higher states of consciousness. This transformation is not a simple metaphor, it is a process requiring internal awakening, an initiation into a new way of perceiving reality. If Jesus truly communicated in a secret code, why is this not more explicitly documented in the Gospels? The answer may lie in historical context. After his death, his followers faced intense persecution and had to adapt their message for diverse audiences, including Romans and Greeks who were unfamiliar with Jewish mystical traditions. Furthermore, in the early centuries of Christianity, debates arose over which teachings should be preserved and which should be excluded. As a result, many esoteric elements may have been deliberately left out or obscured to make the teachings more accessible to a broader audience. The pressing question remains: can this lost code be recovered? If Jesus was indeed unveiling a wisdom that was never meant to be forgotten, then perhaps its rediscovery holds the key to understanding his mission on a deeper level. In the next exploration, we will investigate the connection between Jesus and the ancient Egyptian spiritual tradition. Could it be that both Moses and Jesus inherited a sacred knowledge from Egypt? One of the most striking similarities between Moses and Jesus Beyond their shared messianic roles is their deep connection to Egypt. Moses was raised among the Egyptian elite, educated in the most advanced philosophical and spiritual traditions of his time. Likewise, the Gospels recount that Jesus spent part of his early childhood in Egypt, where his family sought refuge from King Herod's persecution. Was this merely a coincidence, or is there a deeper significance to their shared link to this ancient land? Egypt was a wellspring of mystical wisdom, with its priests and scholars possessing profound knowledge about the nature of the divine, the afterlife, and the hidden forces governing the universe. If Moses and Jesus both carried forward elements of this sacred wisdom, then understanding the Egyptian esoteric tradition might unlock new dimensions of their teachings and missions. In the next section, we will delve deeper into the possible Egyptian influences on Jesus' teachings, exploring whether the secrets of the Nile civilization hold the key to understanding the miracles, parables, and spiritual codes embedded within his message. The profound connection between Moses, Jesus, and ancient Egyptian wisdom is a subject that has long captivated scholars and mystics alike. Egypt, for thousands of years, stood as the cradle of deep, esoteric knowledge that seamlessly merged the realms of science, spirituality, astronomy, and mysticism. The priests of Egypt were masters of an ancient system of hieroglyphic writing. They understood the movements of the stars, and developed elaborate rituals designed to bridge the gap between mankind and the divine. It is no surprise then, given Moses' upbringing as a prince of Egypt, that he would have come into contact with these powerful traditions, shaping his understanding and spiritual outlook. The Bible itself suggests that Moses was educated in all the wisdom of the Egyptians, Acts chapter 7 verse 22, implying that his education went far beyond that of the average person. This raises an intriguing question. What did Moses learn during his time in Egypt that could have been passed on to the Hebrew people, and eventually to the teachings of Jesus? One of the key aspects of this wisdom is the doctrine of the words of power. The Egyptians held the belief that speech itself possessed a creative force. Certain words, when spoken with precision, could change the very fabric of reality. This concept of the creative power of words has a striking parallel in Jewish mysticism, specifically within the teachings of Kabbalah, where it is said that the world itself was brought into being through the divine word. In the New Testament, we find a similar theme when Jesus speaks about the power of faith. He tells his followers, "If you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, 'Move from here to there,' and it will move." Matthew chapter 17 verse 20. This notion, which is embedded in both the Egyptian and Jewish traditions, reflects the deep understanding that words, when spoken with intent and divine alignment, possess the ability to manifest change in the physical world. Could Moses, steeped in Egyptian teachings, have understood this principle and passed it down, influencing the way Jesus later used words to perform his own miracles? Another fascinating point of connection between Moses, Jesus, and the Egyptian traditions is the use of symbols and allegories to impart profound spiritual teachings. The ancient Egyptians developed a complex system of symbols, each carrying deep meanings and spiritual truths. They believed that sacred knowledge should be safeguarded, passed only to those prepared to comprehend it. This principle is echoed in the Jewish tradition, where the rabbis taught that some truths were so sacred that they could only be revealed to those who had reached a certain level of spiritual understanding. Jesus, much like the Egyptian priests, used parables, short, symbolic stories, to convey truths that were accessible only to those with the spiritual capacity to understand. However, there is an even deeper connection between Moses, Jesus, and Egypt that centers on the use of the secret name of God. In the book of Exodus, when Moses asks God to reveal his name, God responds with, "I am that I am, Ihya Asher Ihya," a phrase that was considered so sacred in ancient Hebrew tradition that the priests would avoid pronouncing it directly. Instead, they would substitute it with titles like Adonai or Elohim to maintain its reverence. Esoteric teachings, however, suggest that the secret name of God contains not just the essence of divine power, but also the key to creation and manifestation itself. This sacred name and its power are reflected in the words and actions of Jesus in the New Testament. On several occasions, Jesus refers to himself as I am, A phrase that not only reinforces his identity but may also be invoking the divine strength embedded in this sacred name. For example, when Jesus says, "I am the way, the truth, and the life," or when he declares, "Before Abraham was, I am," he may be calling upon a deeper, hidden tradition, the knowledge of the divine power embedded in the sacred words passed down from Moses and the Egyptians. This hidden power in words is not just a theological concept, it is a potential force for transformation. One that Jesus may have used to manifest his teachings and miracles. The symbolism of water is another intriguing link between Moses, Jesus, and the Egyptian mystic tradition. When Moses parted the Red Sea, it was not merely a dramatic act of divine intervention but a symbolic representation of the transition from spiritual slavery to freedom. This act, viewed through a mystical lens, represents the ability to overcome the physical laws of the world through the power of divine wisdom. Similarly, Jesus' walking on water, a miraculous act that defied natural laws, symbolized his mastery over the elements and his transcendence of earthly limitations. Both acts, though seemingly separate in their contexts, represent the same spiritual truth, that superior knowledge, aligned with the divine, has the power to overcome and transcend the laws of nature. The concept of spiritual initiation also draws a parallel between Moses, Jesus, and the Egyptian mystery traditions. The Egyptian priests subjected their initiates to rigorous tests and trials before revealing their most sacred teachings. A process that ensured only those spiritually prepared would receive the highest wisdom. Moses underwent a period of preparation in the desert, a time of isolation and reflection, before he embarked on his mission to lead the Israelites out of Egypt. Likewise, Jesus spent 40 days in the desert, undergoing his own trial and spiritual preparation before beginning his ministry. This period of isolation and transformation is a recurring motif in many mystery schools, signifying a process of inner purification and initiation that precedes the revelation of deeper truths. If Moses and Jesus both had access to the same hidden spiritual knowledge, what exactly did this code teach? In the Egyptian tradition, there was a belief that every human being possessed a dormant divine potential, an inner spark of divinity that could be awakened through initiation. This idea resonates with the teachings of Jesus, who spoke of the kingdom of God as being within you, and encouraged his disciples to strive for a direct connection with the divine, one that transcended the external rules and rituals of religion. Jesus' teachings often echoed the idea that through knowledge, faith, and spiritual practice, individuals could awaken their divine potential and, in turn, manifest divine power. This concept of divine potential and awakening aligns closely with the Kabbalistic teachings that suggest the ultimate goal of spiritual practice is to return to the original, untainted state of connection with the divine. If Moses and Jesus were indeed initiated into this same hidden knowledge, it would imply that their missions were not merely about offering moral or religious instruction. They were both here to reintroduce and awaken this ancient wisdom, guiding those who were ready to receive it toward a deeper spiritual understanding and connection with the divine. Another striking connection between Moses, Jesus, and the Egyptian tradition is the frequent use of the number 40. This number appears repeatedly in the stories of both figures. Moses spent 40 years in Egypt, 40 years in the desert, and 40 days on Mount Sinai. Jesus spent 40 days in the desert before beginning his ministry. In mystical traditions, the number 40 symbolizes a period of transition and preparation, a time of testing and spiritual maturation before moving to a new level of consciousness. This period of 40 days or years is not merely a temporal marker, but a spiritual one, signifying the readiness of the individual to receive and embody higher knowledge. Finally, there is a mystery that ties all these elements together. The notion that Moses not only learned the sacred wisdom of Egypt but also reshaped it and codified it for the Hebrew people. He took the ancient teachings he encountered in Egypt and adapted them to the needs of his people, making them accessible in a new cultural and spiritual context. Jesus, in turn, may have done something similar, taking the ancient wisdom passed down through Moses and the Egyptians and adapting it for the new era that he was ushering in. If the hidden code of Sinai truly had its origins in Egypt, then it was not merely a set of religious laws. It was a comprehensive map to spiritual enlightenment, a guide to understanding the hidden forces that shape the universe. The big question that remains: however, is whether this knowledge has been lost to time or whether it still exists. Hidden within the lines of Scripture and the teachings of Jesus. The next part of this journey will explore one of the most intriguing aspects of this mystery, the secret name of God. How might this sacred knowledge have been used by Jesus to perform his miracles? Could the words he spoke carry a special frequency, vibration, or divine resonance capable of altering the very fabric of reality itself? What does the Hebrew mystical tradition teach about the creative power inherent in the divine name? And how might this ancient wisdom offer new insights into the nature of the universe? Since ancient times, wise mystics from both Hebrew and Egyptian traditions have believed that the spoken word has creative power. Genesis, the very first book of the Bible, describes how God spoke the world into existence, and God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. This idea, deeply ingrained in Jewish mysticism, suggests that certain words, when spoken with the right intention and divine alignment, have the ability to shape and transform reality itself. One of the most guarded and mysterious aspects of ancient spiritual traditions is the sacred name of God. A divine utterance said to have been revealed to Moses and preserved by only a handful of initiates across generations. This name, known as the Tetragrammaton, YHWH, often transliterated as Yahweh, was considered so sacred that its true pronunciation was either forgotten or deliberately hidden. According to ancient rabbinic teachings, only the high priest of the Jerusalem temple could speak it aloud. And even then, only once a year on the Day of Atonement, deep within the Holy of Holies. It was believed that this name was more than just a sequence of letters, it contained the very essence of the divine. And those who understood its true sound held the key to supernatural abilities. Kabbalistic teachings take this concept even further, describing the divine name as a vibrational key capable of unlocking higher realms of existence. Some esoteric traditions even mention the 72 names of God, intricate combinations of Hebrew letters extracted from passages in the book of Exodus, which were said to grant access to different aspects of divine power when used with precision. Could Jesus have been one of the rare few who had access to this hidden wisdom? The Gospels contain numerous moments where his words did not merely teach, they actively altered reality. When he commanded the sick to rise and walk, healing occurred instantaneously. When he rebuked the storm with peace, be still, the winds and waves immediately obeyed. Such mastery over the physical world mirrors the ancient belief that knowledge of the divine name could grant one command over the elements. One of the most profound and cryptic statements Jesus ever made was his declaration to the Pharisees, "Before Abraham was, I am." This was no ordinary claim. In the original Hebrew context, the phrase, "I am, Ehya," was the same divine expression that God used when revealing himself to Moses at the burning bush. By uttering these words, Jesus was not only making a theological statement but possibly invoking a sacred power, a name so profound that it carried an energy beyond human comprehension. Jewish mystical teachings emphasize that the spoken word is not merely symbolic but has tangible effects on spiritual energy. Ancient rabbinic sources tell of sages who could heal the sick, revive the dead, and even control natural elements through precise vocalization of sacred letters. There are stories in Jewish mysticism of the divine name being used to summon angelic forces and bend reality itself. If Jesus had knowledge of this ancient practice, it would explain why his miracles seemed to require nothing but his voice, why he could cast out demons with a simple command. Unlike the elaborate rituals used by other exorcists of his time, another crucial aspect to consider is Jesus' frequent use of touch in healing. In Kabbalistic traditions, the laying on of hands was not just a comforting gesture but a technique for transferring divine energy. It was believed that when combined with the correct pronunciation of God's name, a practitioner could channel the Creator's power directly into another person. This idea aligns closely with Jesus' healing methods. His touch was not just symbolic, but a conduit for something greater. Perhaps one of the most striking demonstrations of this principle is the resurrection of Lazarus. When Jesus arrives at the tomb, he does not perform any elaborate ritual or recite lengthy prayers. He simply speaks, "Lazarus, come forth." Instantly, a man who had been dead for 4 days is restored to life. This event echoes the belief that true mastery over life and death lies in the spoken word, specifically. in the correct use of divine utterances. The very act of calling Lazarus back from the grave may suggest that Jesus possessed knowledge of the hidden name and its extraordinary capabilities. Another compelling incident is found in the moment of Jesus' arrest in the Garden of Gethsemane. When the soldiers arrive and ask if he is Jesus of Nazareth, he responds simply, "I am." The response is so powerful that the guards stagger backward and fall to the ground as if struck by an unseen force. Could this reaction have been the result of something more than mere surprise? If Jesus had spoken the sacred name in its true form, it might have created an immediate spiritual impact, an energy too powerful for ordinary people to withstand. If Jesus did possess the secret knowledge of the divine name, why was it lost or hidden? The answer may lie in the nature of esoteric wisdom itself. Ancient traditions taught that such power was not meant for the uninitiated, it could only be entrusted to those spiritually prepared to handle it responsibly. Mishandling divine knowledge was considered dangerous, as it could be exploited for selfish or even destructive purposes. Following Jesus' death and resurrection, his disciples continued to perform extraordinary miracles. The Book of Acts records numerous instances where Peter, John, and others healed the sick and even raised the dead in his name. This strongly suggests that Jesus may have passed on elements of his mystical knowledge to a select few. However, as Christianity spread and became institutionalized, these deeper teachings may have been deliberately obscured or lost to time. The great mystery remains. Does this knowledge still exist? Could it have been safeguarded within hidden traditions of early Christianity, waiting to be rediscovered? And if so, what might it reveal about the true nature of Jesus' mission and the untapped potential within all of us? In the next exploration, we will investigate whether remnants of this sacred wisdom survived in esoteric Christian sects, and whether the key to understanding Jesus' miracles lies in a knowledge that has long been forgotten. There are numerous clues scattered throughout both the Gnostic writings and the esoteric Jewish texts that point to the possibility that this profound knowledge, rather than being entirely lost over time, was simply hidden from the world's view. These clues suggest that, while the world may not have access to it, this secret wisdom has always existed, quietly preserved for those who are ready to understand it. As we move forward, we will delve deeper into one of the most enigmatic aspects of Jesus' teachings: the concept of the kingdom of heaven. What exactly did Jesus mean when he referred to this kingdom? Was he speaking of a higher state of consciousness, one that could only be accessed by those who understood the hidden code embedded in the Hebrew tradition? Throughout the Gospels, Jesus repeatedly mentions that the kingdom of heaven is near. But what did he truly mean by this phrase? Could it be that the kingdom of heaven is not just a distant, ethereal paradise we hope to reach after death, but rather something far more profound, a state of consciousness that can be accessed while we are still alive? If we examine this message through the lens of Hebrew mystical traditions, we begin to see that Jesus may have been pointing towards something much deeper than the simple notion of a far-off physical paradise. In Jewish esoteric teachings, there is a core concept known as Olam Haba, or the world to come. According to the rabbis, this term does not solely refer to a distant future, but rather to a parallel reality that exists alongside our own, a reality that can be accessed by those who have awakened spiritually. This concept closely mirrors what Jesus spoke of when he proclaimed that the kingdom of God is within you. Luke chapter 17 verse 21. This teaching was revolutionary in its implications. Jesus was not referring to a literal place we would reach only after death. Instead, he was revealing that the kingdom of heaven is not a distant realm, but a state of perception, an elevated awareness, that we can activate here and now, within our very own lives. If this interpretation holds true, then Jesus was not merely offering moral teachings. He was unveiling a hidden secret about the very structure of reality itself, a truth that transcended time and place. Jewish mystics, particularly those within the Kabbalistic tradition, believe that existence is divided into various levels of consciousness. They teach that the goal of the spiritual journey is to transcend the illusion of the material world and ascend to the highest level of consciousness, known as Ein Sof, the infinite divine light. This notion strongly resonates with the teachings of Jesus, who spoke about the need to be born again in order to see the kingdom of God. But how can one access this kingdom? Jesus provided several vital clues through his teachings. He said that the pure in heart will see God, that it is necessary to become like a child to enter the kingdom, and that many are called, but few are chosen. These sayings suggest a profound process of internal transformation, a journey of spiritual awakening that mirrors the stages of initiation found in various mystical traditions. One group that may have profoundly influenced Jesus' understanding of the kingdom of heaven was the Essenes. This sect believed that the kingdom of God could only be accessed through spiritual purification and mastery of the hidden mysteries of the Torah. The Essenes lived in isolated communities, dedicating their lives to meditation, secret study, and rituals of water immersion, which symbolized the renewal of consciousness. These principles are strongly reflected in the teachings of Jesus, indicating that, much like the Essenes, he may have undergone a similar period of spiritual preparation before beginning his public ministry. Another intriguing facet of the concept of the kingdom of heaven is its connection to the Merkava, or the heavenly chariot, described in the book of Ezekiel. This mystical symbol represents the soul's ascension through various levels of consciousness. And many esoteric rabbis taught that those who mastered this knowledge could experience heightened states of perception and even travel between spiritual dimensions. This idea is mirrored in the experiences of Jesus' disciples after his resurrection, when he appeared and disappeared mysteriously, suggesting that he had transcended the limitations of the physical world. Jesus' actions, including his miraculous healings, walking on water, and multiplication of loaves and fish, were not simply displays of divine power. They were, in fact, demonstrations of a higher state of consciousness that could shape physical reality through a mind deeply connected to the divine. The Last Supper, one of the most profound and symbolic moments in the Gospels, contains elements that directly relate to the concept of the kingdom of heaven. When Jesus shares the bread and wine with his disciples, he is not simply performing a ritual, he is conveying a deep, hidden teaching about the transformation of consciousness. In this moment, the bread represents the physical world, the matter and substance of life, while the wine symbolizes the spirit, the subtle, divine principle of life itself. By uniting the two, Jesus is teaching that true enlightenment occurs when spirit and matter are harmonized. This idea is central to many esoteric traditions, where spiritual ascension is not about escaping the physical world, but about integrating the higher dimensions of reality into one's earthly existence. The parables of Jesus further reinforce this idea of the kingdom of heaven. When he compares the kingdom to a mustard seed, he suggests that it starts small, within each person, but has the potential to grow and expand, much like the potential for spiritual awakening. Similarly, when he says that the kingdom is like a hidden treasure in a field, he hints that finding it requires effort, dedication, and a willingness to search. This discovery, he tells us, is worth more than anything else in life. These metaphors indicate that access to the kingdom is not automatic or easy. It requires persistence, personal transformation, and a deep inner search for truth. Additionally, Jesus often describes those who are part of the kingdom in ways that challenge conventional expectations. He speaks of how the last will be first, and how the meek, the humble, and the lowly are the true heirs to the kingdom. These teachings connect with esoteric concepts about the dissolution of the ego, which is seen as the primary barrier to spiritual awakening. For mystics, the ego is the obstacle that prevents true connection with the divine. Only by detaching from one's earthly identity and surrendering to the flow of creation can one experience the fullness of the kingdom. In this light, it becomes clear that Jesus' teachings about the kingdom of heaven were not just about a distant future afterlife. He was unveiling a hidden path, a journey that transcended the material world and led to a higher state of consciousness, accessible to those willing to go beyond the surface level of existence. Jesus was not simply providing ethical or moral guidelines, he was teaching a mystical and transformative path, one that allowed individuals to connect directly with the divine, to transcend the limitations of the ego, and to experience a reality that existed beyond the ordinary. The kingdom of heaven, as described by Jesus, is not merely a place, it is a state of being, a higher state of consciousness, available here and now to those who seek it. A pressing question that lingers through history is whether this profound knowledge was truly lost or if it was intentionally obscured. In the early centuries of Christianity, there was a gradual shift, one that moved away from the esoteric teachings of Jesus and toward a more institutionalized, rigid interpretation of his message. The kingdom of heaven, originally presented as an internal and accessible state of consciousness, was transformed into a distant and externalized place, attainable only after death. This shift may not have been accidental, it may have been a calculated move to maintain control over the masses. After all, an awakened humanity, aware of its divine potential and spiritual authority, would be far less susceptible to manipulation. Yet, remnants of this hidden knowledge have endured. They can still be traced in ancient mystical writings, preserved within esoteric traditions that have quietly survived the passage of time. The early Gnostic movement, which flourished in the first centuries after Christ, held onto the belief that the kingdom of heaven was an inner reality, a state of heightened awareness that Jesus had revealed only to those spiritually prepared to receive it. If the kingdom of heaven is truly an awakened state of consciousness rather than a physical place, then Jesus' primary mission was not merely about external salvation but about igniting the divine spark within each individual. His teachings were not just about adherence to doctrine but about a direct personal experience of the divine, a call for humanity to recognize its inherent spiritual nature and reclaim its lost connection to higher reality. But what happened to this sacred knowledge after Jesus' death? Why was it suppressed? What led to the erasure or distortion of these profound teachings? In the next exploration, we will investigate how this wisdom was either buried or preserved in secrecy. What forces within the early church sought to control the narrative? Which texts were deemed too dangerous and thus excluded from official canon? And who were the individuals and groups that tried to safeguard the hidden code of Jesus' teachings? Following the crucifixion of Jesus, his disciples faced an overwhelming challenge: how to carry forward his message in a world increasingly hostile to their beliefs. However, was everything he taught truly preserved, or were some of his most transformative lessons, especially those concerning the esoteric nature of the kingdom of heaven, deliberately concealed or altered? The first few centuries of Christianity were marked by immense diversity. There was no single, unified interpretation of Jesus' message. Different sects and communities, such as the Gnostics, the Ebionites, the Essenes, and even the followers of John the Baptist, each had their own understanding of Christ's identity and purpose. Some saw him as a great teacher, revealing a path to inner enlightenment, while others viewed him as a divine messenger, imparting hidden knowledge about the true nature of reality and the cosmos. However, as Christianity grew into a structured and powerful institution, particularly after its adoption by the Roman Empire, there arose a fierce struggle to control the dominant narrative. The process of consolidating religious authority involved intense theological disputes, the suppression of so-called heretical groups, and, most crucially, the selective preservation of texts. What we now recognize as the four canonical Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, were not formally established as the authoritative accounts of Jesus' life and teachings until the 4th century. But these were far from the only writings in circulation. There existed numerous other texts, alternative Gospels, mystical treatises, and esoteric teachings that presented a radically different perspective on Jesus and his message. Many of these texts, later labeled as apocryphal or heretical, contained teachings that emphasized self-knowledge, direct spiritual experience, and the unlocking of divine wisdom within oneself. The Gospel of Thomas, one of the most well-known of these alternative texts, contains a striking passage in which Jesus says, "The kingdom is within you and outside of you. When you know yourselves, then you will be known, and you will understand that you are children of the living God. But if you do not know yourselves, then you will be in poverty, and you will be that poverty." This statement diverges sharply from the doctrine of salvation through faith in external authority. Instead, it suggests that Jesus' true message was one of self-realization and spiritual awakening. If this was indeed the heart of his teachings, then why was it not preserved in mainstream Christianity? Was it deemed too empowering, too liberating, for the common people? Were these teachings deliberately set aside to create a religious structure that emphasized obedience over enlightenment? In the next exploration, we will examine how the suppression of esoteric Christian teachings shaped the evolution of Christianity, and whether remnants of this lost knowledge can still be found today. Did secret traditions manage to preserve these hidden truths? And if so, What can we learn from them about the deeper spiritual path that Jesus may have intended for humanity? If the true meaning behind Christ's teachings was as profound as some suggest, then why was it suppressed? The answer may lie in the power that this hidden knowledge gave to the individual. The idea that each person could access the divine directly, without relying on intermediaries such as priests or established religious institutions, was an intensely subversive concept. This notion posed a significant threat to the early church, which found it far more convenient to build a system where salvation was tied to ritualistic practices, dogmas, and unwavering obedience to ecclesiastical authorities. When Emperor Constantine rose to power in the 4th century, Christianity underwent a radical transformation. In 325 AD, the Council of Nicaea, convened by Constantine, was a turning point not just for Christian theology but for political and social structure. This council aimed to consolidate Christianity as the official religion of the Roman Empire. But it was also a political maneuver, seeking to unify the empire under a singular, standardized version of Christianity. However, this unification process came at a heavy cost. Many of the mystical, esoteric, and Gnostic teachings were deemed dangerous and subversive. Consequently, these teachings were systematically eliminated, with sacred texts destroyed and their followers persecuted. The emphasis on a direct, personal experience with the divine was replaced by a rigid, hierarchical system led by priests and backed by doctrines enforced by those in power. One of the most telling aspects of this suppression was the erasure of the true name of God. As mentioned earlier, the sacred name was considered one of the most powerful and transformative secrets within Hebrew mysticism and was likely known to Jesus. However, as the Church distanced itself from its Jewish roots and the original mystical traditions, the knowledge of this sacred name was either concealed or lost entirely. This raises the troubling possibility that one of the core elements of Jesus' esoteric teachings was intentionally set aside by those who sought to control the religious narrative. Further evidence of this suppression can be seen in the practices of the early Christian mystics, particularly the Desert Fathers, those solitary monks who lived between the 3rd and 5th centuries. These individuals sought isolation in the deserts of Egypt and beyond, aiming to deepen their connection with the divine through practices like meditation, silence, and the repetition of sacred mantras. Many of their methods bore a striking resemblance to the concentration techniques used by Hebrew and Essene mystics, suggesting that an underground spiritual tradition of profound personal enlightenment survived within small, isolated circles. Despite the efforts of institutionalized Christianity to stamp it out, the Knights Templar, a medieval order with connections to early Christianity, also seem to have possessed knowledge of something hidden regarding Jesus. Some historians speculate that the Templars had access to secret documents, revealing an alternate narrative of Christ's life and teachings, one that the Church worked diligently to suppress. This is not merely speculation. The Templars' violent extermination in the 14th century, with their leaders burned as heretics, raises troubling questions about what knowledge they might have held and why it was considered so dangerous. Perhaps the most intriguing element of this hidden knowledge lies in the connection between Jesus and the Jewish mystics of the Middle Ages, particularly the Kabbalists. The Kabbalists developed a deeply intricate system of Torah interpretation that employed secret codes, numerical values, and spiritual symbolism to uncover profound truths about existence. Many of the concepts found in Kabbalah, such as the idea that reality is an illusion and that humanity's true mission is to awaken to its divine nature, strongly resonate with the words of Jesus as recorded in the Gnostic Gospels. If Jesus' true teachings were indeed connected to Kabbalah and Hebrew mysticism, it would explain why certain factions within the Church sought to erase this knowledge. The implications are profound. If Jesus truly taught that the kingdom of heaven lies within us, then the entire structure of institutionalized religion would be rendered obsolete. The power would no longer rest in the hands of the clergy or the Church. Instead, it would be in the hands of the individual, the one who could access the divine directly. This concept threatened the very foundation of Church authority and control. This brings us to a critical question. Can this hidden knowledge be rediscovered today? In recent centuries, fragments of this lost wisdom have begun to resurface. The discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Gnostic Gospels of Nag Hammadi in the 20th century revealed a much broader and more diverse range of thought in the early years of Christianity than had previously been understood. Many of these texts point to a hidden dimension of Jesus' teachings, a dimension that had been deliberately erased from official history. These discoveries suggest that Jesus may have indeed had access to a deeper, more mystical understanding of the world, which he attempted to share with those ready to receive it. If his teachings were connected to the lost code of Sinai, then those teachings might still be hidden within the lines of the texts we have today. It's possible that by studying these ancient fragments, we can begin to reconstruct what was lost and gain a deeper understanding of the true nature of the knowledge Jesus sought to pass on. Looking ahead, the key to rediscovering this knowledge lies in three primary sources: the ancient mystical texts that have survived the ravages of time, the esoteric traditions that have been preserved by various secretive orders over the centuries, and Jesus' own teachings, which can now be read with fresh eyes and a new perspective. The first clue may be found in the ancient manuscripts that managed to escape the systematic censorship of both the church and the rulers of history. These texts, carefully hidden or suppressed throughout the centuries, may still hold the key to unlocking the lost wisdom of the past. In summary, the lost knowledge that once empowered individuals to access the divine may not be gone forever. Instead, it may be hidden in plain sight, embedded in the fragments of texts, the secretive practices of ancient mystics, and the very teachings of Jesus. By looking at these sources from a new perspective, we may be able to recover what was once lost and begin to understand the true nature of the sacred wisdom that has been guarded for millennia. The path to this knowledge may be long and fraught with challenges. But the truth is clear: knowledge, no matter how hidden, is never truly lost. It simply waits for those who are ready to rediscover it. The secret code of Mount Sinai, the mysteries preserved by the prophets, and the hidden language that Jesus may have learned and passed on, they are not gone. They have merely been concealed, waiting for a time when the world is ready to access them once more. The question remains: can we unlock this knowledge today? And if so, what does it mean for the future of humanity and spirituality? Only time will tell. The Gnostic Gospels, the Dead Sea Scrolls, Kabbalistic texts, and ancient rabbinic oral traditions all contain fragments of knowledge that were deliberately excluded from institutionalized Christianity. Within these writings, we encounter a depiction of Jesus not just as a teacher of morality and faith, but as a guide to transcending ordinary human limitations. He is portrayed as someone who understood how to access higher states of consciousness, how to reshape reality through the spoken word, and how to awaken the divine spark hidden within each individual. One of the most compelling indications of this esoteric knowledge is found in the Gospel of Thomas, an early Christian text that was omitted from the official biblical canon. This gospel presents an entirely different perspective on Jesus' teachings, emphasizing self-discovery and inner transformation. One of its most enigmatic passages states, "If you bring forth what is within you, what you bring forth will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you, what you do not bring forth will destroy you." This statement suggests that salvation is not found in external dogmas or rigid doctrines but within each person. True spiritual awakening is not about blind adherence to religious laws, but about deep, internal realization, an idea that aligns closely with Kabbalistic teachings regarding the hidden nature of reality and the unfolding of divine wisdom. Another possible remnant of this lost knowledge may lie within the very structure of biblical texts themselves. Kabbalah teaches that the Torah should not only be interpreted at face value but should also be understood symbolically, numerologically, and metaphysically. The rabbinic tradition speaks of 4 levels of scriptural interpretation: Peshat, literal meaning; Remez, allegorical meaning; Dirash, interpretive meaning; and Sod, secret, mystical meaning. This suggests that when Jesus spoke in parables, he was not merely using metaphors for simplicity but was conveying messages that contained multiple layers of meaning, decipherable only by those with the necessary keys to unlock them. If Jesus truly had access to the lost spiritual code of Mount Sinai, then it is possible that he attempted to reintroduce this knowledge to his closest disciples. The accounts of the apostles after his resurrection indicate that they began performing miracles and experiencing profound mystical visions, suggesting that they had grasped something far beyond the publicly spoken words of Jesus. Peter, John, and James all reported extraordinary encounters that elevated their understanding to a higher level of consciousness. Their experiences suggest that Jesus may have entrusted them with an advanced form of spiritual knowledge, one that allowed them to tap into divine energies in a way few could comprehend. But if this wisdom was so transformative, why was it silenced? The answer, as history has repeatedly shown, lies in the interplay between spiritual knowledge and institutional control. As Christianity evolved into an organized institution, it became necessary to shape Jesus' message into something more digestible for the masses. At the same time, certain deeper mysteries were kept within a clerical elite, reserved only for those deemed worthy to receive them. The original esoteric knowledge of the kingdom of heaven, knowledge that could empower individuals to seek divine truth within themselves, was gradually replaced by doctrines that positioned salvation as something to be obtained through rituals, obedience, and alignment with church authority. Yet, despite efforts to suppress it, this hidden knowledge was never fully eradicated. It survived in secret traditions, passed down through initiatory orders, mystical societies, and alternative spiritual movements. Throughout history, groups such as the Cathars, the Knights Templar, the Rosicrucians, the Desert Mystics, the Sufis, and various other esoteric brotherhoods have preserved fragments of this sacred wisdom. Each of these traditions, in its own way, echoes the deeper, concealed teachings that Jesus may have imparted, teachings that point towards self-realization, divine connection, and the profound understanding that the true kingdom of heaven is not an external realm but an awakened state of being within. Perhaps the most revealing clue to unlocking this lost code lies in the teachings of Jesus himself. If we approach his words with fresh eyes, reconsidering them in the context of ancient wisdom, we begin to uncover what could be a pathway to accessing the hidden truths that he may have passed on. One of Jesus's most famous sayings, "The kingdom of heaven is within you," suggests a profound shift in how we understand access to the divine. It implies that connection with the divine doesn't rely on external authorities or intermediaries but is instead a deeply personal, internal process of awakening and realization. His other powerful statement, "You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free," further points to this idea. This truth isn't something that comes from the outside, it's something that must be uncovered within. Hidden knowledge, according to Jesus, is the key to spiritual liberation. This is not knowledge that is simply handed over, it must be actively sought, pursued with genuine intention and effort. He reinforced this when he said, "Ask, and it will be given to you, seek, and you will find, knock, and it will be opened to you." These words suggest that access to the divine truths is not passive. It's about actively desiring the truth, being persistent in seeking it out, and opening the door to the unknown. Jesus also famously said, "If you have faith as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, 'Move from here to there,' and it will move." This statement hints at something even more profound, the idea that an awakened consciousness, aligned with the divine, can shape and transform the world around us. The power of the mind, when fully awakened, is capable of influencing reality itself. These teachings, when understood in the light of Jewish mysticism and esoteric knowledge, begin to suggest that Jesus was not just imparting moral lessons or spiritual wisdom. He was revealing a hidden science of the mind, reality, and the connection to the divine. So, how can we begin to rediscover this lost knowledge in the modern world? First and foremost, we must turn to the ancient, hidden texts that survived attempts to erase them. The Dead Sea Scrolls, the Gnostic Gospels, and the rich, complex world of Kabbalah are invaluable sources of wisdom, containing fragments of this lost code. These texts may hold keys to understanding deeper, spiritual realities that were once passed down through select groups of people. Next, we must reinterpret the teachings of Jesus in the light of esoteric spirituality. Many of the things Jesus said take on new meaning when considered through the lens of hidden Jewish wisdom. His words, filled with layers of meaning, invite us to go beyond the surface level and explore their deeper, mystical significance. Jesus' teachings were not just about following rules or beliefs, they were about personal transformation, awakening to a higher state of being, and accessing the divine power that lies dormant within each of us. Furthermore, we must practice direct, personal connection with the divine. Contemplative prayer, deep meditation, and the cultivation of inner silence are essential tools for accessing higher states of consciousness. By quieting the mind and turning inward, we open ourselves to the presence of the divine and the wisdom it holds. This practice allows us to attune ourselves to a higher frequency, one that can guide us towards spiritual awakening and understanding. Another crucial aspect of rediscovering this hidden wisdom is exploring the vibration and power of the word. In many mystical traditions, the spoken word holds immense power. Words are seen as more than just sounds, they are carriers of intention, capable of shaping reality. Jesus' repeated use of the phrase, "I am," suggests that he understood the power of words and their connection to the divine. When spoken with purpose and intention, words have the ability to manifest change. Understanding this principle is essential for accessing the hidden knowledge that Jesus may have shared. The ultimate goal, however, is inner awakening. Jesus' teachings about the kingdom of heaven being within you emphasize that this journey is not about reaching a distant, otherworldly place. Instead, it is about achieving a state of consciousness, a deep, transformative awareness that transcends the material world. This inner kingdom can be accessed through self-knowledge, personal transformation, and the awakening of our divine potential. The true secret, according to Jesus, is not found in external dogmas or rigid religious structures, but in the awakening of the divine spark within each individual. The question that remains, however, is whether we are ready to seek this knowledge for ourselves. Are we prepared to embark on a journey of deep, personal transformation? Are we willing to look beyond the conventional, to challenge established systems of belief, and to pursue the hidden wisdom that may lie just beneath the surface of our everyday lives? Now that we've explored the concept of the lost code of Mount Sinai and how Jesus might have accessed this hidden knowledge, it's important to consider whether humanity is ready to rediscover it. The rediscovery of ancient wisdom is not just a theoretical pursuit, it could have profound implications for our spiritual evolution. But is humanity ready for this revelation? Or is this knowledge still reserved for a select few? The answer to this question could reshape the future of spirituality, allowing us to break free from the confines of tradition and access the deeper truths that Jesus may have tried to share. If you resonate with this quest for hidden knowledge, I invite you to share your thoughts. Do you believe that this lost wisdom can be recovered? Is humanity ready for this kind of spiritual awakening? Or is it still something reserved for only the few who dare to look beyond what we have been taught? Your insight may be just what someone else needs to expand their understanding and begin their own journey of rediscovery. Remember, when many minds come together with a shared purpose, the collective manifestation of those intentions can become even more powerful. If you feel called to seek this hidden knowledge and are ready for the awakening, write it in the comments. I am ready for the awakening. This journey, however, does not end here. We must ask, what happened to this secret knowledge after the death of Jesus? Who tried to preserve his true message? And why did history work so hard to erase these teachings? To find out more about this, click on the next video on your screen, The Brotherhood of Light. The secret knowledge of Jesus that history erased. Let's continue this investigation beyond what we've been told. The answers are waiting for us. See you in the next chapter of this journey.